Hi everyone, I'm Lucia. I'm here with Vittorio, our managing partner and founder, for another Challenge Vittorio. Today we're going to be talking about consumer and shopper-centric approach. So going right into it, what does this mean? How do we use it? Is it just a slogan or is there more to it?
No, it's not just a slogan. We strongly believe at Foresight that having consumer and shopper at the center of your strategy is very important because you can miss the picture and just do a lot of analytics based on transactional data, market share data that don't take into account consumer and shopper needs and their barriers and drivers. And just doing analytics on that data may actually lead you to misleading conclusions. We oftentimes refer to it as the brain is those analytics on transactional data, point of sale, and so on, and the heart, which is understanding consumer and shopper needs. And when you have both together, then you're guaranteed that you're going to come up with good conclusions that will fuel your growth.
So we've talked about how putting consumers at the center is super important. Could you give me an example of when a strategy is flawed if you don't take this consumer-centric approach?
For sure. Recently, we've done a lot of work even in RGM, which is typically very driven by transactional data. What are our SKUs? And you can do all of those analytics based on that type of data. And that will point you to white spaces, opportunities to perhaps increase your profitability or launch a larger product. But those analytics, without understanding missions, are not enough. For example, you can find that there is a space, a specific channel or customer where there is an opportunity to launch a larger pack that perhaps will give you more profitability and will tap into a space that is not very crowded. But what are the shopper missions? Are they looking for larger packs? Are they shopping in that specific channel or customer for stocking? You need that other piece of information in order to then conclude that this is a place where you want to play.
So we've been talking about these areas of opportunity to put these consumers at the center of strategies. Thinking about it in practical terms, what can organizations do to make sure they're following this consumer-centric approach?
My advice would be to make sure you do have some pieces of consumer and shopper research. That doesn't have to be a big tracking study, it could be just a survey that you fill, but something that allows you to understand consumer needs and attitudes and the numbers based on their different behaviors. And use that to complete some of the models that you're building that are more based on transactions. Would you like an example?
Yeah, I would love one.
Take into account, for example, we are trying to grow consumptions of beverages. So you can do a lot of models that say, hey, from a benchmarking standpoint, you should be able to reach that additional per capita in that market with those consumers. But what you need is to check that when you add it all up, how much are consumers drinking? There are limits to growth of how much beverages in overall you consume. So interjecting the consumer, reminding that there are limits to growth, will allow you to have better models and introduce additional factors that are crucial to get it right.
We seem to be using the word shopper and consumer kind of interchangeably. Is that okay? When should we prioritize one or the other?
I would say in these conversations I've been using those two words interchangeably, but in reality you need to prioritize one depending on what is the type of questions you're trying to answer, as well as what industry you're playing into. Because if you're in an industry where the shopper is the gatekeeper and makes most of the decisions for the family, then you definitely need understanding the shopper is of paramount importance. However, you still need to understand consumers because the gatekeeper is purchasing for people in the family. If you're trying to inform strategy when it comes to communication, advertising, then understanding the consumer, what they're seeking in those products is more important. So it really depends on the industry and the question.
Are you ready for your last challenge?
I hope I am.
Okay, so still thinking about this consumer-centric approach, would you advise any company, any organization to kind of put the consumer at the center?
I would, although I would add that depending on what industry you're in and what questions you're trying to answer, understanding several other data sources that don't have consumer and shopper data can be equally important. So it really depends on the industry and specifically the type of questions you are asking. We would not blindly ask our clients to really do a consumer and shopper approach. We want to hear better what the question is.
That makes a ton of sense. Do you have any practical examples you want to share?
Sure, think of, say, alcoholic beverages, and for them, the really way to grow is distribution. They want to make sure their brands are distributed in the right channels, the right customers. That's a great example of where a lot of the analytics focus on profitability and trying to make the case for the store why they should store their brands, because it improves the bottom line, maybe fills a space that is not really filled by any other brand in the store. Even in those cases, we've helped our clients build an even stronger case when they're able to show what shoppers are looking for when shopping in their stores and why stocking that brand actually will increase traffic to their stores and win from competition. So even in those cases, I wouldn't argue that shopper is the primary lens that you need to use, but it's definitely an important consideration that will allow you to win.
That makes a ton of sense. And with that, that is a wrap on our Vittorio challenge. Vittorio, muchísimas gracias.
Grazie a te, Lucia. Arrivederci.